Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happenstance into this incredible dialogue with the new Untouchables. I am so happy to introduce and talk to you on this really overwhelming day. We're recording on Friday, September 29th, or I should say 19th, I apologize, at approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And I am joined by Lewis Clark on the upper left, right beside me, the executive director of the Government Accountability Project. And right below him is, of course, William K. Black, our guide through this madness and who has been in the midst of let's just say, the highest levels of corruption for decades. And I'm going to allow Mark Dan to enter, and I'll just tee this up for a conversation. But guys, the week has been, shall we say, overwhelming, and there's so much that we're going to discuss. But I want to just tee it up. Hi, Mark. I'm just introducing the group. So nice to see you.
Okay.
But the look, everything is coming at us fast and furious, right? So, of course, in terms of popular culture, we're seeing the sort of the ramifications of the second major night talk show host, comedian Jimmy Kimmel, of course, being summarily dismissed from ABC and what that reveals. But there's so much more. And right as I opened up this dialogue on the front page of the New York Times this morning, or this afternoon, I should say, is the revelation of further influence at the Federal Reserve in light of what we're seeing come down the pike as it relates to Letitia James, as well as, of course, Lisa Cook. But I mean, that's just the beginning, not to mention, and we're going to get into a lot of the stuff, but I kind of want to have this thing free flow. But in the midst of all of this really, shall we say, in some manner, shape, or form, terrifying information of, let's call it the Death Star, to make a film reference to, like, what we all grew up with in Star Wars. But there is some good news, and that's from Lewis Clark of the Government Accountability Project, who successfully has defended 327 children that were marked for deportation to Guatemala this week, thanks to your efforts. And I think with all of the amazing, horrible things that are coming down the pike, it'd be nice to start with that really good news. Can you walk us through the story and tell us all that's involved, Lewis?
Sure. For one, we didn't represent the children, but we represented the whistleblowers
Sorry.
who came forward with some crucial, critical information, just as the temporary restraining order was potentially lifted, allowing the government to send these children to Guatemala. What this is about is the deportation or the attempt to deport 600 Guatemalan children to Guatemala. The government made an assertion in federal court that the parents wanted these children back, and the government of Guatemala wanted to usher these people back into Guatemala. And that was the presentation to the federal judge in Washington D.C. federal district court. And then it turns out that essentially the Guatemalan government let it be known that they weren't able to reach many of the parents at all of these 600 children who are in U.S. custody for having come, across the border, and were being held in custody or in foster homes. And in fact, what had happened is that they couldn't reach the majority of these children's parents. And in addition to that, of all the people they were able to contact, none of the parents wanted the children to come back, which is not to say that they wanted to disown the children. It's just that they believed that their children were better off in the United States and safer in the United States than they had been in Guatemala. And so the federal judge was quite upset. with the Department of Justice having made those assertions. Then what happened is the TRO got extended, holding back on sending these children back. Of course, they roused these children out of bed at 2 and 3 in the morning, terrified children, and put them on airplanes. They had no idea what was happening. These are all kids that were 10 to 17 years old. And then on the eve of the potential lifting of the TRO, whistleblowers came forward to us, and we took them to the Senate. New York Times did a significant article about these whistleblowers and what they had to say, which is that the database of the government itself indicated that a significant number of these children had been abused, that they were fearful for their lives, and in some cases there was evidence that some of these children had been trafficked or were in danger of being trafficked sexually. And this, of course, was another lie that the government told the federal court. They said that these children were eligible to go back, and they were not. There was nothing in their database that would indicate there was any problem with sending them back. And they had lied to the court again. And so the judge, quite correctly, decided to provide a permanent, or well, I should say, a temporary injunction until these cases could be adjudicated one after another. So that's what happened today, or well, that's what happened yesterday, and the judge went so far as to say, as to the 2,000 other children who are in this similar circumstance from Guatemala and other countries, that he was looking at how the government functioned in relationship to these children. So he didn't extend his injunction to all children, but he let the government know that he, gave them a warning that he's going to be looking out for how they handle those cases as well.
Bill, I don't think I could really do service with words to talk about how incredibly huge.
For some reason, I lost the sound.
Okay, well, test 1, 2, 3. But the information that we continue to get from our friend Lewis Clark from the Government Accountability Project literally has been on the front page of the New York Times, or affiliated with the front page, going to the Emile Beauvais revelations and the whistleblowers. Obviously, we talked last week about FEMA. Now this, Bill, this is a pretty wild time, all things considered. Do you want to pick up from there?
Sure, it's what we've been talking about, the extraordinary advantage that comes from whistleblowers, and how the United States is really unusual in the world in the extent to which we have people come forward. So congratulations to Lewis, to Gap, to all the attorneys involved, and of course to the kids in particular. And let's hope that the judge continues and extends the relief. But this demonstrates precisely the unique quality that you can get. I'm going to stop for a second. What Lewis has just explained demonstrates concretely some of the unique advantages to having high-level whistleblowers in particular, who were personally involved in the key meetings, who know the databases, who can understand the nuances of the representation that the government is making, and can explain and show by explaining the databases completely compelling truth that demonstrates something that would have been unthinkable for most of my adult life, which is the Department of Justice senior personnel are deliberately lying, and deliberately lying in a way that will endanger the lives of children. That's what's going on. That should be an extraordinary big deal. And the next part should be done. This is what we've been talking about in the fight agenda, which again is not violence, it's resistance. We should be using the states that are responsive, that are still democratic, should be subpoenaing witnesses. They should be talking with Lewis. The subpoena can be important in a number of technical circumstances I'm not going to go through here. But then we should find the most compelling whistleblowers, and they should be doing town hall-ish sessions all over this country. We have hundreds at least, and by now I think the numbers are actually in the thousands of people willing to blow the whistle on this administration. And you hear occasionally where the lawyers are particularly competent or the case happens to come up and be an acute stage about it. But you're not hearing the drumbeat that needs to exist, that this is not an anomaly. This is standard operating procedure. The Justice Department is no longer remotely worthy of that name. The people in leadership positions, and we've talked about it throughout the administration, you cannot have a senior position unless you are willing to lie. So they use a litmus test. Was there an illegal attempt to attack the Capitol? If you say yes, you can't be employed. You can't be promoted. And that's a perfectly efficient device that totalitarians use in their standard package as a screening device to make sure they get the worst people. Also, there's a next stage that we've been talking about in this program, and that is the sanctioning of the attorneys who lie. So that is a key point of vulnerability. And if a number of these people, and I mean like 3, lose their bar licenses relatively quickly, and this is not a quick process, that would actually be an effective shot across the bow that would do inestimable good, not in just the 3 cases, but in hundreds of cases, because it's a big frigging deal to have
Well,
that sanction. And under the current Justice Department manual, for example, you have a duty as a Justice Department attorney to immediately inform your supervisors in a formal way that the judge has indicated that he or she has a substantial problem with your ethics, and that in itself would be a thunderbolt.
well, and
So,
that's where I was going, Bill, because these federal judges can start to sanction people today, and bar them from their courtroom. Look, I've seen bankruptcy lawyers in small towns in Ohio, who made that third misrepresentation to the bankruptcy judge, banned from the courtroom. And that's exactly this is the perhaps the advantage we have over Hungary here in the United States, that we have lifetime appointed judges, and those lifetime appointed judges can decide who appears in their courtrooms, and ban them, and let the Trump Justice Department take that all the way up. That let the Supreme Court say that it's okay for lawyers to go in and lie to federal judges. Even this crew is not going to do that at the end of the day, I hope. But even if they do, it's years from now, and that other process can take hold at the same time. But I think it's a huge opportunity for judges who believe in the integrity of the court to be able to now it's time for them to take a stand. And this is the perfect opportunity for such an act.
And it's a chemical assay for the Supreme Court. They have to
Correct.
put up or shut up about the rule of law.
Exactly, exactly. And are they really going to look in the eye of multiple individual federal judges acting based on individual facts and circumstances, where there were proven misrepresentations, thanks to Lewis and his team and others that came in front of the court. And are they really going to say that that's just okay? That there's just nothing you can do about it. The president can pick his own lawyers. I don't think so.
You're on silent, Lewis.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And the interesting tidbit in this particular case is when an earlier judge issued this temporary restraining order to keep the kids from being shipped to Guatemala without due process, without any due process, uh, and uh, and then as soon as the TRO was issued by the judge, the White House said that the judge had kidnapped the children to keep them from going back to their parents. And that was the White House word on it. The judge had kidnapped these kids. And it turns out our government had kidnapped these kids to send them, and they're against the wishes of their parents.
And just at 10 seconds, look into the Guatemalan last 30 years.
Yeah.
The amount of deaths, the amount of deaths of children, the amount of abuse of children is extraordinary and has very much to do with the Guatemalan government historically as well. The idea of doing this to these children and then claiming that you're doing it for their good and to fulfill their parents' wishes is such a vile lie that the word despicable is only one that works for me.
One of the things that's happening in the federal courts too, at least in it's not the circles I run in, but I know some people in those circles, I'm talking about the top judicial circles in this country. But the word is, at least from what I hear, is that the judges are no longer, after 6 months in office, right? The judges are no longer giving any kind of credence or credibility or benefit of the doubt to Justice Departments. First time it's happened, and that's routine now. So increasing the judges are basically not believing the Department of Justice.
I was hoping, as I approach this dialogue today, to just see you guys riff on everything that's important to you, to interact, because you're all colleagues, you're all at the highest levels of our legal system and so forth. And I just hopefully provide the information to the people. But I do want to set you up and welcome to the dialogue, June, from this perspective. As I open this up with, obviously, I had to mention Jimmy Kimmel and all of the magnitude of kind of the pop culture scenario of censorship and all that goes into the mergers and acquisitions and all of these things that we've seen from Paramount forward. But we saw a gentleman who appeared in the con, and I'm referencing this for you, Bill, particularly, but for all of us. William D. Cohen, of course, has a front page article about none other than, of course, Larry Ellison, right? And the acquisition, not just, of course, of what just took place with all things Paramount, but TikTok is on the table. Mm-hmm. And then what's actually, according to his reporting, we're going to see potentially Time Warner. One guy potentially is now going to have complete control of 80% of US media potentially. Okay. That's kind of in the process. And so as Lewis was revealing this extraordinary story about not just the 327 Guatemalan children that, because of a whistleblower, will not at the moment be sent back to Guatemala, and all of these things that he had revealed feel to me Epstein-esque, except with more people, right? We're talking sexual trafficking potentially, right? Okay. This was, of course, in the New York Times, this piece. And by the way, to the viewers out there, I will include the article in the description below. But boy, June, this is kind of like your repository of what you've known forever. I wonder how you juxtapose, and I guess the last piece of this, and then I just hope everybody just riffs from this point forward. But I mean, it's coming out of so fast and furious, but we saw Steve, and we talked about this last week. We saw our chief of staff, a gentleman who was, I mean, it's incredible who this guy Stephen Miller is, and he might have complete control of 3 agencies, right?
No, it's more than that. No, it's more than that. And Stephen Miller is a nice place to start. Why is Trump so effective this time and he wasn't last time? Last time he delegated the congressional stuff to Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, and they got through the wish list of Republican donors. This time, the government has been delegated to Stephen Miller and Russell Vought. Trump pays attention to a few things: tearing up the trees in the White House, destroying the Rose Garden, he pays attention to. Tariffs, he pays attention to. But Stephen Miller is running the government. I'm waiting for the story that Stephen Miller and maybe Russell Vought are the people who forced out Elon Musk. I wouldn't be at all surprised. And Stephen Miller, he's not just in charge of 3 agencies. He is the power behind the throne. And with Musk gone, we need to focus on Miller. So Miller, and you can listen to various things. I listened to a podcast a couple of days ago that actually called him a Nazi. And then another one that called him a fascist and said, but we're worried. We don't know if the American people understand what a fascist is. The stories today, he's totally in bed with Palantir. So he is running agencies that increase deportation. He has a substantial financial stake in an organization being a for-profit organization being hired by the federal government that is involved in carrying out his immigration policies. Now, Donald Trump has worse conflicts of interest, but Stephen Miller's pretty high up there. And if you go into Stephen Miller's history of intolerance, of racism that has been there since he was a teenager, he hasn't tried to hide it. Cruelty is the point. He helped engineer the cruel policies of the first administration. He is all about cruelty. He needs to be the face of this administration because he is the power behind this administration. I don't know whether Lewis's whistleblowers could identify his role, but he has certainly had a role in administration policy in at least all of the immigration cases. And any number of other things going on that involve things like use of troops to round up people, the insistence on 1 million deportees. He laid this all out, the use of the National Guard, mass deportations before the election. And what he's doing, he has been plotting for some time. And Donald Trump says to him, yes, don't bother me with the details, but he has a green light for a program based fundamentally on cruelty.
I can guide, but please feel free to fill in if you feel compelled. Because what I just heard from June, and I'll ask you, Mark. Okay, here's another piece of the puzzle, right? As far as how we've all come together by way of the con. So I like Mark Elias. I think he's a great, former general counsel of Hillary Clinton, of course, very close to none other than our favorite, Eric Holder. And of course, he went on for an hour today in quite a bit of a sermon about the power of truth. That nobody now, because we are now an authoritarian state, we are now a fascist state, coming straight from Mark Elias and all that he's doing, by way of gerrymandering and all the things that are going to happen with the election that we can look forward to and everything else. But here he is telling us, the American people, you can't be on a house of cards. It is now time to show the truth about everything. This is what he said, about everything. But meanwhile, what do we know? We know that this corruption has been in the shadows now for decades. and it's gotten worse and worse and worse. And it is racketeering it's Godzilla of racketeering with Donald Trump. You're the master of RICO from where I'm sitting,
And,
based on your
and
experience. Please take us forward.
well, this is less RICO than and more politics, but what's pulled Russell Vogt back from the precipice is the fact that the people that they're regulating are starting to scream about the fact that there's no regulations and they're no longer able to control the process in the way that they have historically, in the way that they did during the 2008 financial crisis. Um, so there's actually been a huge reaction in what has disempowered Russell Vogt inside the administration and left him kind of locked in his little cage of the CFPB and in the budget. Not that those are little cages, but they're but is that banks and non-bank financial institutions who are fighting with each other, who are all viewed themselves as on the gravy train for by the way, the same the same people that had patrons in the Obama administration also have felt like they have the same patrons or different patrons, but patrons nonetheless in the Trump administration. They're starting to push back because now they can't operate their businesses because there's no certainty about what the rules are. And so they've neutered him. Now, the problem is that the folks that for whom cruelty is the point are far less sophisticated and frankly rational in their decision making. They just want that. They want the hate. They want they feel like that somehow that their life disappointments need to be punished by punishing people who come from other countries, and it's a different mindset. But this is not this is starting to fail at the regulatory level, and you're starting to see pushback in Congress. Look at Senator Kennedy, and the one from Louisiana holding a hearing on the CDC and on vaccines. I think we're going to start to see the Josh Holleys of the world start to pop up and start asking why in the world we've stopped enforcing antitrust laws in this country very shortly. So there's some pushback there. So again, I mean, there's still plenty of room for. Maybe I'm more optimistic than others in this group, but there's still room for patriots to step forward here and in their own little niches to speak out and establish and say, you know what, the truth does matter. What's best for the country does matter. Not necessarily what's best for whatever particular interest group is being benefited. Um, and and maybe finally people will get it because the predecessor, the Bushes and the Obamas of the world were so good at masking the corruption and keeping it in a and making it seem so genteel. This crass, open, very direct corruption maybe what we need to turn the corner to where we wanted to go back in when we first all started talking to each other back in the in 2015.
Bill, I got to ask you if your reaction and maybe walk us through what you're sort of reacting to by way of Lisa Cook and also Letitia James and the Fed.
Yeah, well, to pull it together, this is what I study, right? It's what happens when a seemingly legitimate heads of state and CEOs use the organizations they control as a weapon and a shield to defraud and abuse people with impunity. And you can see how addictive it's become with Trump. He really loves the ability to destroy people's lives. And so it isn't just Stephen Miller, who is a tragedy, and that, of course, the only reason he exists is America provided a haven to way too few Jews before the Shoah, right? American policy was not good. It was not remotely good, but many Jews got out. And his predecessors, his grandparents were those. And from that, most people learn empathy. He learned hate. He truly spews hate all the time. And of course, he lies about these things. But now look how supercharged it's about to become putting together the things you mentioned. So Musk wasn't all that good at the data stuff because Musk actually is quite incompetent, right? Technically. But Ellison's whole thing is information, and Palantir and Black Cube's whole thing is getting information to destroy people, right? So these are the folks that you hire as a defense counsel. And indeed, this is not hypothetical. This was used to defend Harvey Weinstein and to defend the woman who ripped off Theranos, right? They
Elizabeth,
both hired the Black Cube, and Black Cube targets whistleblowers in particular. It uses really advanced electronics, many of them gathered, actually from Mossad. They're ex-Mossad folks in many cases. Um, and they have zero conscience. They were hired by Orban in Hungary. And to do what? To destroy George Soros. And why? Because George Soros, one, is pro-democracy, and two, he's Jewish. So the bizarreness of ex-Mossad folks being used by fascists to destroy Jews is insane. So Stephen Smith and how you find these folks and create these fake databases. And by the way, once AI gets really good, they're going to not only be lying, they're going to be adding fake stuff to databases left, right, and center. That's going to be a big thing. Nowadays, it's crude. The AI often has six fingers, et cetera, type of stuff. But it will get much better, and it'll get much better very, very quickly. Okay, so we lived in San Carlos, California, for 20 years. Oracle was right there, baby. That was our backyard, type of thing. And Ellison has always been extreme right wing. He's always feared regulation because he fears regulation is essential to creating an effective rule of law against major corporations. That's why they want to gut it or use it as a weapon against others. So we'll go after TikTok and we'll get a sale to our folks at a distressed price, and then we'll do the things that we said were terrible, right? And so this combination of a shield and a sword simultaneously with this veneer of legitimacy and the untold resources is why we keep emphasizing. It's not enough to have a no kings approach. You got to have a no robber barons because you've just seen what these robber barons will do. And Trump is for rent, right? In the old days, he was for rent really cheap. Now he's sort of figured out he can make billions instead of tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars in the scams. And he doesn't really have to run them. He can outsource them to private business, which will give him a cut, right? Once we get the sovereign wealth fund and crypto going, I am praying that Lewis will have a stream of whistleblowers from the Fed and Treasury giving us the inside story on how that scam is going to both endanger America and make the Trump clan just fabulously wealthy.
I want
Mark,
to,
yeah, can I ask something?
sure.
I'd like to ask Mark,
Yeah.
as
Okay.
our dear friend from Ohio, who is busy working on political campaigns,
Yeah.
was talking about Sherrod Brown lagging a bit in the polls.
Yeah.
And if we were to tell the story of Sherrod Brown's defeat in the last election, it would be the crypto boys were out there with an enormous amount of money, running negative ads, emphasizing transphobia, and the story of Sherrod Brown as a genuinely honest guy who stands for the right things, isn't flashy, isn't grandstanding, is not getting through. Are you optimistic this time will be different? I mean, is the story Lewis told, which is so compelling, does it get through to anybody but us?
I hope so. I mean, look, that's on us. I mean, I think that those of us that understand what is happening, have to spend our next 2 years and 4 years and 30 years
Mhm.
trying to explain it and translate it going forward to figure out to be able to say that there are Democrats because it's easy. It's easy for us to fall into I fall into this trap a lot. And that is that a pox on all their houses. I mean, these folks, these folks all were just competing whores for business, and to push the working class to the brink to the benefit of investors on Wall Street, and so and all of them were doing the same thing. They just were coming at it from slightly different angles. And but the fact is that somehow, to my astonishment, the party that managed to break out of that branding uh, was the Republican Party, who said, no, we're actually on your side, and then with hypocrisy that is is certainly historic in I think in world history, then it has implemented a program that does the exact opposite, and looking people in the eye saying we're here to protect, we're going to restore the sovereignty of working class people in America, um, and somehow their path to do it is by making it impossible for them to get good paying jobs, to be protected in the workplace, to be able to have protection from financial predators. That somehow that's the formula to restoring the greatness of working class America. Um, and so I don't think it's a hard argument to convince people that that's just not that's not what that's not what's happening here. And so I'm hopeful of all the potential messengers in the country that Sherrod is among those that can carry that message, and get it across. But the brand of the party is so broken, and the hypocrisy of his colleagues over the last 30 years is going to make it a real challenge. The difference is the Republicans were at least direct and honest, saying we're here to protect business. That's the business of this party, is protecting business, and we're going to do that. And then they did it. Whereas the Democrats said we're here to protect working class people, and then they didn't. And so that's a tough marketing challenge that people have. And I think that one of the things I conversation they had this week was a long built out conversation about how do we start just maybe one local Democratic Party at a time, rebranding how it is, and retraining the people that are their candidates and that potential candidates to start talking about things in a way that is not about themselves or aggrandizing power or beating the other side, but about how how the other side is harming working class people, and what specifically we're going to do to advantage them if we're fortunate enough to get back into power. in the country. And so, we all, but understanding that this corruption, under the guise of protecting the working class, the destruction of the regulatory state right before our eyes, it's an hypocrisy that should be easily exposed, and that we're going to have to expose, and we're going to have to do it without billions of dollars from the very people who are benefiting from it. And that's what's been so hard for Democrats all these years. And and how we get to get all those places, I don't know. That's a lot that I'm asking. But that's what's got to get done.
I'd like to proffer a response to that and ask a question to Lewis in context to that, because that's what we do every week here. Thanks to you guys offering your time pro bono for free to give the wisdom and everything that you've been doing for decades, right? I don't think it's hard. It's the truth is what we have to do. That's the truth. And to Bill's point, you gotta kneecap the freaking robber barons. You can't, in this fight platform, you can't be on the hook to the guys that are controlling the system. We've done this for now as long as Lewis Clark has been directing the Government Accountability Project. But by my numbers, I think you're up to what, 47 years, Lewis? and the fact is, Bill brought up Black Cube. Oh, and then you think of BlackRock, and then you think of Blackstone, and then you think of Blackwater. Boy, that's a little nemesing. I mean, what happens in the shadows? Well, some pretty bad things, obviously, right? And
well, my name is Bill Black, so.
Well, yeah, you are the sheriff to send into the back of the outlaws to where the black hats are counting money with the white hats, because that's what we got to take down. And that's what you've been doing for decades yourself, Bill. And so the question to you, Lewis, your entire composite, I mean, the whistleblowers that you guys have represented stand as kind of like this all-star group of American heroes against the worst of the outrages in corporate America and other aspects of government, so forth, for the last 4 decades. Are we in new territory? And more importantly, thinking about Larry Ellison, right? And being able to completely have state-run media in the effort, in the banality of what Bill just described. How important is it for us collectively, particularly those of you who know the story, are in the side of the story, doing the story every day, to get this information out to the American people in a way that could hopefully be useful to an electorate that could be enlightened by the information we bring to the fore?
Yeah, I mean, basically the situation of whistleblowers, and I think Bill will agree with me here, is that they will come forward as long as doing so is not futile. So I think it really is up to the rest of us to see that the risk they take is not going to be futile. And if it's not, then you'll have droves of whistleblowers coming forward. And obviously you need protection as well. We offer the protection. There are many other attorneys who do as well. So I don't, I mean, we say that you need protection. You need to make sure that these whistleblowers are not destroyed in the process. So the protection is necessary. But I think to the point that you're making is that we have to make sure that their information gets out there in as effective way as possible. And I don't begin to know all the ways that needs to happen, but it does need to happen effectively, because if it does, then you'll have more and more whistleblowers. And so you'll have more and more insider information. And the one thing about the sort of impunity that seems to exist in at least portions of this administration is that they're not hiding it. They're not. I mean, it's like they just. It astonishes me when there's not one iota of evidence that you can have a senior advisor to the president say that a judge has kidnapped children because all these parents want them back, when there's not one iota of evidence of that. But the whistleblowers are there to essentially refute that charge, and then it's up to the rest of us to make sure that there's impact effect of that information. As long as we continue to show that, there'll be more and more people coming forward. And I think to the point of effective government, and which we touched on earlier, is that this government is not working well. And it's not working well for people on all levels of society. And this is just the beginning of that, of the incompetence. And, because people are being rewarded because of loyalty to a president and not loyalty to the Constitution or the rule of law. And so you have more and more incompetent people who are nothing more than cronies, who got their job not because they're qualified or have any particular expertise, but they just toe the line. Well, you can't really run the government that way effectively. So I think the seeds of the destruction are there.
Unless you want a government that would follow Kim Il-jung in North Korea and, of course, Vladimir Putin in Russia. And June, I want to turn this to you for closing comments, because Bill has taught us so much that is just laying out in front of us the whole time. I mean, it's not genius, it's audacity. And all of the nature of, I'm reminded of Bastiat, right? When a group of men discover plunder, they create a legal code to authorize it and a moral code to glorify it. But yet, since we've been recording the new Untouchables, June, you've brought profound revelation after revelation after revelation that is 2-3 weeks in advance of the front page of the New York Times. But the thing that's always intrinsically stuck with me from the very beginning is how you've always compartmentalized that maybe America hasn't felt enough pain, that to get the world that we grew up with, that you guys were basically chartering us throughout your entire professional careers, only came from 2 world wars and a Great Depression and a global calamity. Can you please provide your insight going out of this conversation here to please bring the gravity that you always do?
I'm happy to be as bleak as possible. Another case of black being dominant. So when we look on the horizon, I found the comment about the regulated being worried, because with the disappearance of regulations, so too goes unpredictability, and so too the power of the predators is enhanced. And we should keep in mind that the predators don't just prey on the minnows. The sharks go after pretty big fish. And that's what we're talking about. What we're seeing within the administration already is the divides. There is a certain part of the right which lives on outrage that needs somebody to turn on. We're hoping they turn on the administration. The denial of the First Amendment, the cause of Charlie Kirk. There are some of his supporters upset at an attorney general who talks about going after hate speech when they thrive on hate speech. There are stories today about the U.S. attorney in the Trump administration who has failed to indict James Comey or Letitia James because they haven't actually done anything wrong. Letitia James' mortgage issue turns out to be a clerical error. And of course, the claims against Lisa Cook turn out, if you had done the slightest bit of investigation, there's nothing there. Now that's embarrassing, they're incompetent. But what the administration thinks is competence is being able to nail people on fake charges. A judge today in the New York Times case dismissed the complaint against the New York Times. Didn't, as far as I could tell, call it frivolous, but said a complaint is not an outcome is not a forum for political diatribe. So they have 30 days to amend the complaint, and he set a page limit of 40 pages instead of an 83-page rant unconnected to legal theory. Now, the moment of accountability comes when those attorneys are sanctioned personally, which has happened in other Trump cases. When the people bringing false charges are arrested, which they should be, for misuse, when Trump bribery and extortion, the use of the federal government to engage in bribery and extortion. And Bill can tell you, in accordance with white-collar crime, the people who concede are both paying a bribe and the other side is receiving one. The people at the receiving end of extortion who give into it are bribing government officials for favors. There is potential criminal liability. So we know the Supreme Court will save them. It's never met a white-collar criminal it wasn't willing to let out of jail. Indeed, if you go back to the Enron and WorldCom cases, the Supreme Court overturned the conviction of the key criminal in the Enron scandals, Jeff Skilling, but the lower court simply reaffirmed the conviction on other grounds. So what will it take to bring down MAGAism? Look at what they're doing to the financial system, and you ought to be terrified because they're removing the guardrails. Bill has described this in detail in the course of this podcast. If there is a crash in the US, and perhaps for cyclical reasons like AI hits a wall on energy, when the crash comes, the Fed won't be there as it was the last time with credibility. You won't have a sound economy because all those pockets of fraud we've been describing, they then collapse in a downturn. Florida real estate under assault because of climate change will plummet. You could have a depression in the US that takes down the rest of the world. And the terrifying thing, I've been optimistic that it's only a financial crisis I saw on the horizon, but with the way things are going, undermining NATO invites war, undermining the defense of Taiwan invites Chinese attacks, an implosion in the Chinese economy may encourage military action as a way of shoring up that government. What Trump is putting into play are lots of bad things. I'm hoping, on my optimistic case, is it's only a financial crisis, and the public will then be out for blood, not assassinations, criminal convictions. And criminal convictions and showing the pervasive corruption of the administration could energize the young men who feel they have no purpose in life. The purpose should be what the new Untouchables is about, bringing the powerful to account.
Wow. And you just reflected and radiated what I've known my whole life, because fortunately I come from a family that values these traits. It is about honor. It is about integrity. And once again, the blacks propelling us up to the light, because as Mr. Bill Black always taught me, it's not necessary to hope, to persevere. So what we do is we send out the bat signal to the new Untouchables, and of course, Lewis Clark with the Government Accountability Project. We keep forging ahead on this righteous grind. And I would encourage you, please, to like and subscribe and share, to discover all of these folks individually, to follow us. And I will have descriptions underneath and to all of their, of course, wonderful bios and so forth. But please reach out to me if you have questions, if you're a reporter. More importantly, we want to get this information out to the masses in every which way possible. Please check out the con at thecon.tv. Please check out the newuntouchables.com. We'll have more information coming down the pike. And as well, please always stick with us each and every Friday when we can come together to try to find ways out of this madness that we're all in the midst of. We can do this. My friends, thank you for tuning in. All the best. Onwards and upwards.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Yes. Have a good weekend.
Take care.